welcome to my i-MiEV and I. My name's Mark, and today we're doing a range test in the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, and it has the upgraded battery pack, somewhere between 28 to 30 kilowatt hour battery pack instead of the 16 kilowatt hour battery pack. Um, so we're all good to go. Yep, totally unscripted, almost impromptu. Only decided to do this yesterday after reading some comments on a Facebook post. Anyway, so what we're going to do today, we're just going to drive from home onto the Pacific Highway down to a halfway point, turn around and come back. And this is just to do a range test on my 2010 Mitsubishi i-MiEV that's been... What the hell is that? Oh, I've had the car 2+ years. It's never made that noise before. I've got no idea what that is. But then I've never had the car. This is a great video, isn't it, folks? I've never had the car navigation on before. I thought I'd turn that on just to see if you guys can pick it up on the video, just to make things a little bit more interesting, perhaps. So maybe it was the car navigation telling me something about overspeed. Not that I should have been. All right, so where were we? Yes, it's a 2010 Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's been upgraded with the new battery pack from Oz Electric Vehicles or Oz DIY Vehicles, and they're down at Springwood. All right, so we can almost see everything that we need to here. Okay, you should see the jury rig to get this. All right, so yes, so when you first charge up the... Holy smokes. Some people pull up really quick behind you. So yeah, when you first charge up the vehicle, the gasometer will be quite optimistic. But then once you start driving, it'll come back down to something a bit more real world, I suppose. But anyway, so yes, so I've had the battery pack upgraded by Graham, and that was done over a year, just a bit over a year ago, I think, April last year. And this is May 18th today, I think. And it's been phenomenal. Completely transformed my use of a car. And speaking of the vehicle, I suppose we should talk a little bit more about where it came from. So I've been looking around for something for probably about 12 months. My interest in electric vehicles first started when I saw Who Killed the Electric Car in the cinema years and years and years ago. And since then, I've just had a general interest in renewable energy, solar power, efficient homes, batteries for homes. But anyway, so I'd been looking around for a little electric vehicle, and part of that process was probably about 4 years ago. There was an EV convention, expo, down in Melbourne, which I went down to with my sister Janet and a friend Fabian, who I met down there. And we went to this little EV expo. It wasn't huge, but there was a Holden Bolt or Chevy Bolt there. There was a Nissan Leaf, and there was also a Mitsubishi i-MiEV. And after trying them all on for size, I'm 6'3", about 120 kilograms. After trying them all on for size, I realized that even though the Mitsubishi might be a bit compromised width-wise, height-wise and legroom-wise, it was the best of all of them. So yeah, so that allowed me or enabled me to realize what I was looking for, a car that would physically suit. I guess most people have to try on cars to see if they suit physically, especially if you're a bigger bloke. And so yeah, so the expo was good for that, being able to work out what side of vehicle I was looking for. But it was probably 2 years after that that I started looking for an i-MiEV. In 2019, I started a Facebook page, which was all Electric Vehicle Parts Australia, because I've got some older cars that I'd like to convert as well. When you're trying to find information on where to buy parts or who to get parts from or who can do conversions for you, there wasn't a single portal for it. So I started up that Facebook page. So in the process of having that Facebook page, running that constantly, looking for salvaged vehicles or cheaper EVs for sale, I came across this one. It was on the Auto Trader auction site, and it was for sale down in Newcastle. Just adjusting that again. See, I think it started somewhere around about 10 and a half or 11 grand, and over a period of about 3 weeks, it dropped down to 10,000. Might have dropped to 9.5, and I called them up and I said, "Look, will you take $8,000 for it, and we'll just put it on the credit card?" And they said, "Give us a minute, we'll give you a call back." So 10 minutes later, they called back, and I said yes. So credit card information, etc., etc. Get off the phone, and I'm thinking, have I made a mistake? Buying a car sight unseen, and an electric vehicle too. And at least I was able to get out of them how much approximate range it had on it, which they said was 75 kilometers. Anyway, so a couple of weeks later, the car turns up. It's dropped off at the front of the house. I get the keys. I go down there to try and start it up. Wouldn't start. And I worked out the 12-volt battery was having issues, so charged it up a little bit, and I was quite happily driving it for about 14, 15 months. When initially I spoke to Graham about the car prior to purchasing it, he did say that the batteries, after 12 years, because it was April 21, 22. Anyway, after about 11 to 12 years, the battery is going to be on its last legs. Anyway, so it turned up, it had a 75-kilometer range on it, and I enjoyed driving that for at least 12 months, just going on memory here. At least 12 months with no issues, getting to and from work, and being careful with how I would drive it otherwise. Anyway, it got to the point where it started losing range, going down from 75 to like 70 kilometers. And I think when it started charging up to about only 60, I realized I needed to do something about it. So that's when we started talking to Graham again. And initially, when I first spoke to Graham, he had told me that there was a battery upgrade that he was looking at doing for it, and we talked about rough prices, etc. Anyway, so ended up taking the car down to Graham. I think he had that for about 2 weeks, and the vehicle was upgraded. So the new battery, it takes it from 16 kilowatt hours to about 28. It's 28 to 30 because the battery chemistry incrementally changes, and the newer batteries that Graham's getting now, I think, have a slightly higher capacity. But yeah, that's constantly changing. Anyway, so had the battery upgrade, and away we went. And it's of course it's transformed the use of the vehicle. Being able to go 200, 220 kilometers on a single charge, whereas before I was down to 60, 65 kilometers on a single charge. It's obviously, it just makes a world of difference. Completely transformed it. Just jumping back a little bit in the story, when the vehicle turned up, I was super impressed with it. It's like brand new. It's the newest car I've ever owned. I just don't see the point in buying new vehicles that depreciate. But yeah, the condition's great. It's got some shopping trolley issues, little lumps and bumps on the outside. It now has a couple lumps and bumps in the back tailgate and the back door, courtesy of me hitting the garage door one night when my brain wasn't engaged. Yeah. But no, it's in awesome condition. A lot of people ask me, a lot of people think that it's a new vehicle, it's a new electric vehicle, and when I tell them it's 12 or now 13 years old, they're pretty much gobsmacked. Anyway, so yeah, it was in great condition. Interior is fabulous. It's like new. I have seen some reviews of i-MiEVs where people complain about the hard plastics and the lack of comfort, lack of this, lack of other bits and pieces, but it doesn't bother me. Like hard surfaces means hard wearing. If I look after this vehicle, it's going to be good to go for another 10 years. Um, I just think people's expectations, I don't know, I suppose if you've got the money and you want luxury, fine, go for it. In the past, I've had the money to buy like a Model S twice, just paid cash for it, but I just don't see the point. I really don't. This does everything that I need a car to do, except for picking up timber from Bunnings, but I use my old 1960 F100 for that, which is one of the cars I would like to convert. Um, so yeah, awesome little vehicle. Um, it's only myself, the partner, and the dog, so that's fine for us. But I would think that any average size Australian, you can probably get 4 average size Australian, average medium sized Australians in this. But yeah, it's a great little vehicle, and I think it's highly underappreciated. And it's the kind of car I think that you need to spend some time with to understand how awesome it is. Um, Seriously. Initially, when you look at it, you think, what the hell's that? It's too weird, it's too dinky, it's too small. But as I said earlier, I'm about 6'3", 120 kilograms, and it's quite comfortable for me, even on long trips. I have gone from Brisbane to Boona and back before with my sister. It's comfortable enough. Um, it's not the height of luxury, but it does everything that I need it to. It might have something to do with my Scottish grandparents. Um, Maybe that frugality just passes down through the genes. But seriously, it's the more time you spend with it, the more you just come to appreciate it. It's a fabulous little car. Uh, you're not moving around more car than you need to. Like you see people in the Teslas or the BYD 803s or any other electric vehicle that you can get here in Australia, and it's one person, two people, and these are large electric vehicles. Do you really need that? Um, I don't. So, but anyway, we'll probably rabbit on more about the i-MiEV as we go. But so we've left Tarragindi, we're up onto the Pacific Highway, and we're heading for the Gold Coast. I won't go that far. I'll reach a halfway point and turn around and come back. When you're driving on, excuse me, when you're driving on the highway, the gasometer alters quite quickly because it's assuming that high energy consumption, the freeway consumption, for a long period of time. So that can be a little bit tricky knowing exactly how much you've got left. But once you get off the freeway and back to normal suburban speeds, the gasometer will start coming back up again. All right, 98. All right, so I think we started at 247. It's saying we're at 210. Normally, on a good summer's day, I can get about 220 kilometres out of this in a single charge, and I'm probably speeding in an 80 zone. Oops, because it's construction. Yeah, 200 to 220 during summer. I think about 222 is the best I've gotten out of it. And that's driving in B mode. I normally just drive in B mode. I like the little bit of regen that I can get from it. In winter, the range does drop to 200 or just a little bit under 200. That seems to be pretty typical for what happened last year. So yeah, the batteries kind of like it during summertime when things are a bit warmer, not so much in winter. Mind you, I'm in Brisbane in Australia, so our winters are pretty mild. Like if we saw 0 degrees in the morning, I think that would be fairly exceptional. So we're coming up to Springwood, and on the right side of all this mess, we can wave to Graham at Oz DIY electric vehicles on the right. So it's been quite convenient for me too, because I have a Mitsubishi i-MiEV Expert, less than 30 minutes drive from me, and that was perhaps another strong reason for buying the i-MiEV, because Graham's just down the road. So if you don't know Graham, he likes the i-MiEV. He's had one for quite some time, but he first converted, I think it was a Suzuki Swift, over a decade ago, maybe 14 years ago. He decided he wanted an electric vehicle. There wasn't anything around, so he built his own. And that car still runs and drives and gets used today. But yeah, Graham does all sorts of things there, from Suzuki repairs to i-MiEV battery upgrades. They're working on a Leaf battery upgrade as we speak, and they also do conversions of classic electric cars. So there's a little Honda 600S that they're finishing up. They've done a large Toyota Land Cruiser, which I believe had about a 200-kilometre range with capability for towing large caravans and trailers, combis. There's a little Holden Cruise that they've done, which is an awesome little conversion. So yeah, so that's Graham, and it's super convenient having someone that professional, that someone so interested in electric vehicles. Anyway, whoops, watch the speed limit. Okay, so just driving down the Pacific Highway. Hopefully both cameras and microphones and everything's working. I don't have any air conditioning on. There's no need for it. I do have a little bit of air coming in at my feet into the cabin. But apart from that, making sure my windows are wound up. Normally I drive down the highway with the windows down, like in summertime. Just that's why I don't have a need for air conditioning. And I'm hearing wind noise for probably the first time since I've owned the vehicle, because again, pretty much drive everywhere with the windows down. In fact, it's one of the things that kind of amuses me, that it'll be a pleasant summer's day. It's not hot by any means, and every other car around you is driving with their windows up, and I'm assuming their air conditioning on, and I don't see the need for it. I really don't. But anyway, so looking at the gauge, we can see the gasometer's gone to 198 kilometres, and I can just see the charge meter. I think we're 1 bar down. I've got a camera strapped in front of my gauge cluster, so it's making things a little bit awkward to see. But anyway, so today we'll be going past Dreamworlds, Movie World, past the Yatla Pies. Yeah, it's a highway, so probably not that exciting. I don't know if I'll be able to keep up a running commentary for 2 hours, so how interesting is this going to be? An unscripted 2-hour commentary from a 2010 Mitsubishi i-MiEV. No, it's too quiet in the cabin. I have to keep talking. Normally I'd have the radio on, but YouTube and copyright laws, I suppose. I don't know too much about that. As you can tell, I don't know too much about producing videos, but it's the moment I have 2 iPhone 8s. The one on the left is just clamped to the headrest post with a Utilux hose clamp, of all things, just to give us some sort of view out of the front of the cabin. And the other iPhone 8 is on a little tripod, sitting on a blob of blue tack, gaffer taped to the dash, to try and give you that gauge cluster view, which is a little bit askew, but it's not perfect, but at least you can see what's happening. Yeah, there's a few stories I'd like to tell about the i-MiEV. I've just started doing some videos, but when I saw the Facebook post yesterday about people wanting to see proof of the range that the i-MiEV upgrade has, it's a little annoying because, Graham's, it's a business that's been running for years. He's been doing this for quite a long time, and people seem to be questioning the legitimacy of the product. I'm not sure, but I think he's done over 40 of these upgrades already. Yeah, people just want to question things. They don't want to take a legitimate statement by a legitimate business operating here in Logan City, that their product actually works as advertised. So anyway, so I saw that and I thought, well, I'm off. How boring is this? I'm off work for a week for a medical condition. Um, so I have the time, and I thought, well, this would be a pretty straightforward video to do. Slap some cameras on, and away we go. Proved it. Turned out that it wasn't that straightforward, because I was going to do this yesterday, but trying to work out camera angles and how to attach cameras to various pieces of equipment in the car so you can see what's happening was way more problematical than I thought. Yeah, but anyway, so here we are today doing this. What's happening? Can't see any other electric vehicles on the road with me. Not unexpected, I suppose. There's not too many in Brisbane, but the number's growing. Of course, you see a lot of Tesla Model 3s. You seem to see a lot of Tesla Model Ys. Old Nissan Leafs. And on occasion, I'll even see another Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's quite a rare sight. My understanding is there are only about 250 of them imported into Australia or brought in by Mitsubishi, and about another 150, maybe 200, that were grey imports brought in by individuals. So they're few and far between. But yeah, awesome little cars. Watch your speed. So what are some of the comments that I've had about my i-MiEV? When I first turned up at work in it, I work for the transport industry, or in the transport industry. All right, so speed's just gone to 110, so we'll drive to the road conditions, coming up to about 110. Yeah, so when I first took it to work, no one actually snickered, or there was no obvious laughing, but when someone my size, which one day we might venture to show you, when someone my size hops out of this tiny little toy car, yeah, there's probably some concealed laughing perhaps. But anyway, I had things like, well, how do you drive it? Well, you just hop in and drive it. So, well, how do you feel in driving in traffic? And I said, well, yeah, it's normal, you drive in traffic. And it's like, but it's so small. I said, well, maybe it is, but it's quite zippy. From when you accelerate from the line, it's electronically controlled, so you don't get full power. I guess that's done to protect the drivetrain. But when you're in normal city speeds, 40, 50, 60, 70 kilometers an hour, when you put your foot down, it will actually jump forward, so it's quite zippy. And of course, always the question is, well, how do you charge it? Excuse me. So, explain, well, you just go home and plug it into the wall. And it's like, really? Really? Do you need special equipment for that? Well, with the i-MiEV, you don't, not when I'm using a granny charger. I just had a 15 amp circuit put in place and just used to plug the cable directly into it. I now have, what's it, an EVSE? I now have a charging unit, which is good because it gives me additional information and it allows me to adjust the amperage down. I just need a bit tidier. Works fine. Yeah, so all these people at work kind of thinking, well, what the heck? But and a lot of them thinking it's new, which I have mentioned before, but it's in really good nick. It's a great little vehicle. So the speed limit is 110 through here, but no one seems to be in a hurry, so we'll just keep up with the general traffic. So yes, 2010 i-MiEV that I purchased in 2020. It was from the Lake Macquarie Council of Newcastle, and obviously they looked after it extremely well, and I'm really appreciative that they did, because it's a fantastic little car. All that I've done to it since I've owned it is new front tyres, the battery upgrade, of course. We did a few suspension um, bits and pieces on it recently. Just the front end seemed a little bit rattly. There were just some bushes that needed replacing, which a major suspension company here in Brisbane couldn't get anything. And of course, I just went down and spoke to Graham, and Graham had all the parts necessary within about 3 or 4 days. He had just basically had everything off the shelf except for one lot. And the only other thing we replaced was the shockies on the back. The shockies were still okay, but the rubber grommets, the bushes on the ends, were starting to crack. So it was easier just to replace the shocks rather than just trying to get the new bushes or grommets for the ends of the shocks. What else have we done? Just a general service. When I first bought it, I took it to Graham. They just had a quick once over everything. Brake fluid was changed because there was water in that. The oil in the gearbox or the transfer case, or whatever you like to call it, but in the diff, that was changed at 50,000 kilometres. But apart from that, everything else is in really good nick. I haven't mentioned yet that when I first got the car, it only had 38,000 kilometres on it. So it wasn't used a lot, perhaps only used for short trips. Yeah, at the moment I can't quite, well, I'd have to play around with the cluster to get it, but I think last time I looked, about 57,000 kilometres. So since 2020, we've gone from 38,000 kilometres to 56, 57. So I don't do a lot of driving, but it does get driven. Generally, it's just to and from work, shopping on the weekends, occasional countryside drive on the weekend. If the tyres weren't so low profile on it, I'd be happy to do more countryside driving. But with such a low profile tyre, all I would need to do is hit a pothole or something on the back of a country road somewhere, and I'd be stuck. Well, normally I'd be stuck, but about 12 months ago I started chasing around for a spare tyre for the i-MiEV, and I discovered that it's a Toyota Corollas around about the 85 to 86 year mark. The stud pattern and the spacing is virtually identical. So in the boot of the i-MiEV now, I've got a little space saver spare and jack and wheel brace, etc. So if anything does happen, at least I'll be able to limp home at no more than 80 kilometres an hour. I think it's handy to have. It's a good idea. bit of traffic on the Pacific Highway or motorway today, I guess. I can't say that I do this trip very often. The last time I was down the coast was probably about 18 months ago to look at another vehicle, and that was on a weekend. So is there anything else I can tell you about the i-MiEV? Hmm. Well, my dog loves it. She jumps up and sits in the back seat. I didn't bring her today, of course, because potentially 2 hours in a car with the windows wound up at high speeds is no fun for her. I've talked about the interior of the car being in good condition, and it is. But even the foam in the seats, after all this time, everything is still quite firm. Some might say too firm, perhaps, but um, I guess I'm not into luxury. I'm just into practicality, affordability. Um, that's what's important to me. If I had a lot of kids, well, obviously the car's not going to suit. If I did huge distances to and from work on a daily basis, that car may not suit. If the place that I was working had charging where you could charge it up, well, you could go 200 kilometres to work if you wanted to, charge up there and come home. But what else? Hard plastics on the dash, doesn't bother me. Plenty of cubby holes, I suppose, enough cubby holes. And one thing that I didn't like about the i-MiEV, there was no center console. It's just nice to have something to rest your elbow on. So found something on eBay, and there's quite a comfortable center console with a bit more storage space in here as well. Noise levels in the i-MiEV, well, I suppose on the highway it's higher than other cars. Then more modern cars have greater sophistication in their construction, um, better noise insulation, but traffic slowing. But again, it doesn't bother me. So I don't know if I've talked about all the pricing. So yeah, I ended up buying this for $8,000, and it cost me about $600 to get it transported up from Newcastle. Again, I bought the car sight unseen, so it was a bit of a gamble. The battery upgrade, because I was at the tail end of the prototyping, Graham was still buying the old batteries from the vehicles if they were viable. My old batteries were still viable, so the battery upgrade typically costs 16,000 Australian dollars. Because my old batteries were still viable, he purchased those for 3,000. So it cost me $13,000 for the battery upgrade. So all up, I'm driving around in what is for me a near new vehicle because of its condition. I now have a 200 to 220 kilometre range. The car is going to be good to go for another decade, probably, if it's looked after and maintained. And all up, it's cost me $21,000, including transport, $600 to have a brand new, inverted commas, brand new electric vehicle to drive around in. In Australia at the moment, the cheapest electric vehicle that you can buy is probably the BYD Atto 3. I think there's some incentives happening at the moment, but that's 42 or 43,000 Australian dollars. And that's not affordable. That's not cheap. I think there's a huge percentage of the population that would love to be driving an electric vehicle, but there's nothing affordable for them. If we could get something like the i-MiEV, perhaps a little bit wider, for around about $30,000, I think that would generate a huge amount of interest. If at all possible, something like the i-MiEV, again a little bit wider, for 25,000 Australian dollars, with the same range, with about a 200-kilometre range. That would be perfect for a large percentage of the Australian population. Even if it were a second car for daily duties, dropping kids to school, picking kids up from school, doing the shopping, because there's a large amount of room in the back, and if you fold down the rear seats, there's a ton of room too. But for doing daily shopping, but again, it's a kind of car that once you start living with it, you realise how practical it is, how useful it is, and how less is more it is. Do you really need all the bells and whistles that modern electric vehicles give you? But then you also have to pay for that. Electrically heated seats in colder countries, yeah, probably a good idea, but massaging seat, lane change assists, things like that, I just don't see the need for it. Safety levels in a modern electric vehicle, of course, it's going to be greater than what's in the i-MiEV, but the i-MiEV again is from a different era. But for getting me to and from work, getting me to the shops, running around, taking the dog for a drive, it's a perfect vehicle. And because it's a smaller vehicle with a smaller battery, I think it treads more lightly on the planet than any other electric vehicle. And the other thing too is it's upcycled. I suppose if this were a petrol vehicle, when the engine came to its end of its life, they probably just would have wrecked the vehicle. Just would go on the wreckers just for salvage, I suppose. But yeah, the battery was just a fairly easy option to replace, and again, it's good to go for another decade. All right, so the gasometer's down to 184 kilometres. If I can't quite see, I know our charge rate's still high. I think it's only 2 bars off. I can't quite see the charge rate. But yeah, the gasometer will actually be reading higher or chewing through its estimations faster because we're doing highway speeds. Quite a nice day today. Hopefully everything's recording as it should be. The iPhones will do about 2.25 hours on a single charge. Hopefully this is all achieved in less time than that. Helensvale, exit 60, and I've got a Commodore for my behind. all these petrol cars. One thing I noticed after having the i-MiEV for some time, I think you become very aware of the stench from ICE vehicles. I don't know what that is, whether it's just a general awareness. It's like when you're looking to buy a particular vehicle, and all of a sudden, because you're interested in that vehicle, you seem to see them everywhere. Maybe there's something similar with the driving electric vehicle, because you don't have any immediate fumes around you. You become quite used to cleaner air, perhaps, and then when you stinky diesel or a stinky petrol vehicle with issues with its catalytic converter drives past or is in front of you, it's really obvious. But imagine if all the vehicles on the road were electric, how much fresher the air quality in our cities would be, in our highways would be. I seem to be losing my tape on the camera on the gasometer. There we go. Until it starts bouncing down again. Wow. Wow. One thing in the i-MiEV speed, I just zapped up to 112 then, and you're just completely unaware of it. Even for an old EV, even with its low profile tyres, and even with its um, less efficient than new electric vehicles sound um, deadening or soundproofing in it, it's just so smooth. The acceleration is effortless. There's no gear changes. There's no vibration from the motor. There's no surge as it changes gears. It's just so smooth. So you constantly need to be keeping an eye on your speed in this little beastie. So I guess the meter's at 172 kilometers. I think we're down 3 bars. I can just see that on the charge gauge. And we're now at exit 69 on the highway, Nerang North, Surfers Paradise exit. And we'll just keep going and slowing. So one thing the battery upgrade gave me was turtle mode that actually works. When I first bought the vehicle, I was doing range tests in it, just trying to work out where the bottom was. And to my dismay, one day I found out that when it got down to 2 kilometers, it would just stop. I didn't get any turtle mode. I didn't get any warning. There was loss of power, slow driving for about 100 meters, and then that was it, gone. So yeah, that was a little bit embarrassing. I think the first time it happened, I was able to crawl slowly up a street, and there was this old fella out the front of the house opening the gates for his wife, Keith and Linda, and I sort of called out to him and said, "Oh, can I borrow some power?" And he kind of looked at me and he said, "Oh, it's an electric vehicle." I said, "Yes." He said, "Yeah, sure." So reversed in, got my cables out. He hooked me up, because you can charge from a 10 amp circuit on this. Anyway, so yeah, as I was saying, that Keith and Linda, so they invited him upstairs for a cup of tea and a piece of fruitcake and sat there for about 30 minutes talking about electric vehicles because they're interested in electric vehicles themselves. They're an older couple, they're older than me. I'm 59. Yeah, just sat there talking about, chatting there for about 30 minutes about electric vehicles and what we like and don't like, and solar panels, batteries for the home. And it gave me, 30 minutes gave me about another 10 kilometres. So I wasn't far from home anyway. So yeah, that's the first time it happened. The second time I should have had enough range left, but it got to about 2.5, 3 kilometres left on the gasometer, and just refused to go any further up the slight hill. So anyway, so what Graham's upgrade gave me was I now have turtle mode that actually works, and yeah, thanks for that. Turtle mode that actually works, and they've increased the buffer on turtle mode. I think it starts flashing at about 25 kilometres, 25 to 28 kilometres left of range on the gasometer, and turtle mode seems to enable around about 10 to 12 kilometres. I've only seen that once. I typically don't run it down that low. Wait for it to start flashing. On occasions of being close to needing a recharge, but it hasn't been quite flashing on the energy gauge, fuel gauge. So I've just done a bit of a quick of a drive round just to get it where it's ready to recharge and just go straight home. So now I have a real turtle mode that works, which is handy. All right, so 172 kilometers, 171 kilometers on the gasometer, and I think about 4 bars down on the battery charge. And it's now 11:56 a.m. I don't know when I left. I should have taken note of that. Must have been somewhere around about 11. So Wongarry exit on the Pacific Highway. One thing the upgrade gave me, and I don't know why, but the i-MiEV drivetrain was pretty quiet from memory at around about 100 k's. But with the upgrade now, I actually get a little bit of a electronic hum, which I kind of like. It's very futuristic. But yeah, apart from that, she's pretty quiet little beastie. Just thinking of electric vehicles and efficiency, here I am driving down the coast. The car to the right to me, that's Kia, fairly large. It's got 2 people in it. Car on the left appears to have 1 person in it. Probably most of these vehicles have 1 person in it. So if they were all driving something smaller and more efficient like this, make a lot more sense. And actually save them dollars. Speaking of dollars, how do I charge my EV? I have a 13.2 kilowatt solar system on the house, which I waited 10 years for and 3 houses for, but finally we have the solar system. And this little car is charged exclusively, 99.9%, by the solar panels on the roof. So it cost me nothing to drive for energy costs. I've only fast charged the i-MiEV once. That was the BP at Lara Pinta. Yeah, and that was just an experiment, just to see if it could charge, if it would charge, because the i-MiEV has the Type 1 and Type 2. It's Type 1, I think, 17 something or other, but it also has the chatter mode for high-speed charging. And high speed for this, I think the highest I saw was about 28 or 29 kilowatts that it was putting into the car. So I probably would have had a full charge on this, and it might have taken about an hour and a half. But anyway, so yeah, the car's most of the time charged up at home from the solar panels. So yeah, so no energy cost for driving the vehicle, which on today's prices, my other daily driver used to be a 2000 Honda CR-V. So it's, with current petrol prices today, it's about $2,500 a year I save on petrol that I don't have to buy. So the i-MiEV saves me that much money. It doesn't cost me anything to put energy into the vehicle. Our system is so large that basically we doubled the size that we needed, but we haven't had a power bill since we put the system in 2019, and we do get some money back on that from the amount that we export to the grid. So it's a win-win-win situation. Talking about efficiency, a lot of people may be aware that ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles, are fuel efficient only to somewhere between 17 to maybe 30%, depending on the vehicle you're driving. Turbo diesel might be more efficient, but on average, if you said internal combustion engines only have a 30% efficiency, and people hear that, but I don't think they truly understand what that means. So for every 100 litres of fuel they put in the vehicle, 30 litres of fuel goes to driving the vehicle, and the other 70 litres of fuel just goes out the tailpipe in excess heat, vibrations, friction, etc. But if you flip that to dollars, for every $100 of fuel you put in a vehicle, $30 is used to drive it, and a whopping $70 is just wasted. I don't think that people truly appreciate that. They don't realize that when they're going to the Bowser and filling up. And when you stop to think about it, that's a whole lot of energy that's just been wasted for decades, a century, on internal combustion engines. We haven't had an alternative, a suitable alternative, sure, but now that we do, where electric vehicles can be anywhere from 90 to 95% energy efficient, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But yeah, because I've been aware of the fuel efficiency of combustion engines for a long time, but it's not until you kind of slow down and stop and really think about that, well, hang on. And then when you convert that to dollars, it just really hits home. It's frightening. But yeah, the amount of energy that's been wasted by humankind for the last century, frightening. So yes, electric vehicles, much more efficient. Why wouldn't you buy one? When it comes down to cost. If these were more affordable for everyone on the planet, everyone on the planet would be driving one. And we're getting there. A big fan of the Fully Charged show, 60. The Fully Charged show with Robert and Jack, and they've been talking about this for a long time. You know, what we need is cheaper, more affordable electric vehicles that everyone can afford to drive. And it's getting there. And it seems to be at the moment that China's leading the way with that. But still, you know, the BYD Atto 3 at 44,000. So what's the other one? The Atto 2, BYD Dolphin, which we're just kind of talking about here in Australia at the moment. But seriously, a little car like the i-MiEV, a little bit wider, because the American version was a little bit bigger. I don't know how much bigger, but if we could something like this, a little bit wider, um, it's got the potential to be the people's EV. The Model T, the Volkswagen Beetle, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV, because apart from people, large families or people who need to tow things, but for a huge percentage of the population, a vehicle like this would be perfect. But they just need to spend a little bit of time with it. Once there was down at Cleveland, once a year, I think it's run for 2 years now, there's an EV Expo down there, which is uh, quite large. The first year was massive. Second year, I think there was slightly less numbers. But the second year, I went down there to support Graham to bring down my i-MiEV because it was upgraded, and just to show people the i-MiEVs. And everyone that came up to the car was again thinking it was new, and because it's a fairly touchy hands-on experience. It's like sit in the car, play with the car, etc. Um, and a lot of them were just like, it is quite roomy inside here. Oh, it is quite big. These are more average-sized people. They weren't giants like myself. But yeah, just all of them just like, wow, okay. So yes, a little vehicle like this has lots to offer. Seriously, lots to offer. I'm losing my tape. All right. Early heads and we have issues. So 160 kilometers on the gasometer, and the battery is 4 bars down. And we'll save the final result for when we get back home, I think. Everyone's bailing from this lane. Hmm. It's going to be like this forever. Letting me in? Yes, because he wants my lane. There's no one there. Bit of acceleration, make sure no one wakes me up the behind. All right, I think we'll just turn around and head back. Don't need to be stuck in traffic. And this seems to be an appropriate place to do that. As long as I don't miss the on-ramp. All right, what else can I tell you about the i-MiEV? Don't know, I think I've rabbited on reasonably sufficiently. I've never actually done a kilowatt per kilometer energy bits and pieces on this, but one of the other things I like about it as well is because it's only a 28 kilowatt hour battery, even with the granny charging from the 240 volt 15 amp, it's not a ridiculously, oops, wrong way. It's not a ridiculously long time to charge up at home. Before the battery upgrade, it would charge up in about 6 hours. Now with the, excuse me, with the new battery, it's about 9 to 10 hours. I do shift work, so the car's at home for the greater part of the evening, sorry, greater part of the day. So that's how I can charge it up from my solar. Right. Losing my. All right, well, we'll leave it on the speedo and the gasometer. At least we can still see that. I probably need to find a place to stop and try repositioning that. But you can still see the relevant information, except for the battery state of charge, which I can just flip it over to when we need to see it. All right, I'll just see if I can fix this up a little. Not for me. Push that down. All right. See how long that lasts. Hopefully long enough. Now to get back up to speed. 0 to 60 in, I don't know, I've never tried. I love that wine. Yep, and we're back up to 100 kilometers an hour. That didn't take too long. Back up to freeway speeds in, I don't know, what was that, 10 seconds or something? So yeah, where were we? Charging, yes. So yeah, so the car's at home during sunlight hours, and I trundle off to work about 2 o'clock, so that means I can charge it up from solar. We also have a 12 kilowatt hour battery pack on the house as well. So between that, the hours I work, and the system, it's 99.9% solar powered. I'd have to say, if anyone's considering buying a solar system, we initially were only going to get about a 6 kilowatt system, and I was talked into by the guy selling me the system into doubling it. It was like an extra $4,000, um, but it basically doubled the size of the system, and it was brilliant advice. That was Ian Gittris at UV Solar. Can't quite think of the company name, but yeah, that was Ian. And yeah, it's been phenomenal. Because of that, it's actually produced a lot of power, and it's enabled us to pay off the system in less than 4 years. The savings we make on our power the saving from not driving, paying for fuel for the i-MiEV, and also the amount of money we get for the amount we feed back in. The entire system paid for itself in less than 4 years, and that was $16,500. And that was made affordable by the Queensland government having an interest-free energy loan where they were offering $10,000 for solar panels, an additional $3,000 if you also getting a battery, and that's an interest-free loan paid off over 10 years. So that was the big enabler of us moving to renewable energies in such a big way. So again, thank you, the Queensland government, for that. So it's incentives like that, which I don't know how much it costs the government, but they're getting the money back for it. But it's enabled us to do what we did, and as a consequence, half of, well, probably 2/3 of what we generate is exported as green energy back into the grid. So it's a win-win-win-win circumstance for everyone. And speaking of solar energy, and then you get people that are talking about, but what about all the solar panels that are wrecked, and what about all the batteries that go to landfill? Well, as I said earlier, Graham bought my old battery pack from the i-MiEV, 16 kilowatt hour battery pack, which was no longer suitable for an electric vehicle, but perfect for home storage. So that gets converted into a Powerwall for someone's home, and that lives on for probably another decade, gently being charged up by solar energy during the day and slowly discharging at night time to power a house. So batteries going to landfill, which is just ridiculous. They're too valuable. They're way too valuable. Just ridiculous. And as for solar panels, well, the solar panels on my roof have a 20 to 25-year warranty. So in 25 years' time, if there's any issues, then we'll have to look at having them recycled. But there are already businesses that are starting up and doing recycling for solar panels and everything renewable energy. There's so much misinformation out there about electric vehicles, about solar energy, about cobalt in batteries. It's just mind-boggling. Something I haven't talked too much about, which is, well, a cousin to new electric vehicles. It's conversion of electric vehicles. All Electric Vehicle Parts Australia is the Facebook page I mentioned earlier. I started in 2019 to be a single portal for people looking for information on batteries for converting their old combustion engine vehicle, for doing conversions on boats, motorcycles. If people were looking for batteries for a Powerwall for their home, DIY Powerwalls, it's designed to be a single portal for people looking for equipment to do any or all of that. So we started off just looking for people in Australia that did conversions. I think when I first started it up, it was a pretty short list. There were about 7 or 8 people that I could find. But in that time, that's changed. I think there's more like about 20 conversion businesses where you can go to them and they'll supply you with a kit for you to adapt to your classic vehicle and convert it to electric, or they'll do complete conversions for you, drive in, drive away. If you're looking for batteries for a Powerwall, you want to make your own Powerwall. A lot of people were buying wrecked Teslas, Model S and X, and reusing the batteries from those packs. Nissan Leaf, the batteries from those packs are quite useful for DIY Powerwalls. But yeah, and there's a lot of repurposing of electric vehicles. With the Tesla Model S and X, there aren't as many of those in Australia, being premium and expensive. But at the moment, there's large amounts of Model 3 and Model Y that are being salvaged, being wrecked. You can buy them from anywhere from about, on a good day, $10,000 to way more than that. But people harvest the motors out of them and put them in their own conversions. A Model 3 motor can be put into, excuse me, a Volkswagen Beetle. It's pretty outrageous to take a Beetle from probably around about 65 horsepower, maybe on a good day, to potentially up to 300 horsepower if you wanted to be that crazy. Yeah, so that's what that page is all for. So for the uninitiated, just to explain it a little bit more, but yeah, any petrol vehicle can be converted to an electric vehicle if you're willing to put in the work and also the dollars. So what have I seen recently? There's a company down in Melbourne that have put a Model 3 motor into a Volkswagen, and it's possible to electronically dial up and dial down the power on that just with the tablet. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink here. I'm losing my voice. It's the most I've spoken in a long time. Let's see if I can adjust that. Losing my tape. So yes, I think I mentioned Graham. They have that Honda 600S that they're doing a full electric conversion on. Wow, I really am losing my voice. Full electric conversion on, and they're using a Hyper 9 in that. Direct drive from the tail shaft down to the diff. And from memory, I think a Hyper 9's, depending on the voltage of the motor, which one it is, about 110 horsepower. And I'm just guessing, but the little Honda S, I think it's a 65 to 69-ish somewhere. I don't know, would that have had 40 horsepower, 50 horsepower, maybe 60 at the most from factory? So you've got this 110 horsepower motor, electric motor, so full power from 0 RPM basically, and that thing's just going to hoot. And again, they did the Toyota Land Cruiser, which was pretty beefy boy conversion for sure, because he needed good range, 200 kilometers, and towing as well. So that was quite a impressive conversion. What other cars have I seen converted in Australia? Oh, of course, I forget the fella's name, but he's got an early Cortina, um, pre-70s. It's not the square one, it's more the rounded Cortina. And I think that conversion was done by Traction EV on the north side of Brisbane. And that's running a Hyper 9. And he's been successfully driving that around for 3-4 years now, from vague memory. If we go to the rest of the world, there's more conversions here in Australia. I'm just kind of struggling to think of any specific examples, but over in the States, of course, you've got EV West that do all sorts of amazing things, and they've been doing that for quite some time now. Icon, forget the name of the gentleman, but they were a company that was started to refurbish Toyotas, early Toyotas, four-wheel drives, and they kind of moved out into the Icon derelicts, whereas they find an interesting original condition, old American vehicle. The 50 seems to be a favourite choice, and they completely rebuild these things. Just take the body off, and it's a brand new 21st century chassis with all modern components and drivetrain. But they've probably about 2 years ago did this. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's a big old Buick sedan. It's an awesome beastie. But they did a full-on conversion with that to electric. There's another individual, Kevin Erickson, that's got an early Plymouth Satellite, and he's used the rear motor from, I think it was the Tesla Model S. It's a 600 horsepower motor, along with all the batteries, so 16 units, probably somewhere around about 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, and he's converted this Plymouth Satellite. It's an amazing conversion. He's quite a cluey guy. But yeah, you can convert anything to electric. At home, I have a 1960 F100, which I've spoken to Graham on a few occasions about doing a conversion on, and it's something I'd like to do. At the moment, we're just waiting for a few more dollars. But yeah, converting this 1960 step-side F100 to electric would be awesome. It'd be a great showcase vehicle as well. And there's a few different ways you can convert that too. You could, if it was manual gearbox, you could just bolt up an electric motor to the gearbox and hide your batteries and your controllers in the inverters in the rest of the vehicle, and away you go. That's probably the cheapest option. And by having the manual gearbox, you've got all the different options for your torque multiplication. Like if you're driving on the highway, you could be in fourth gear and just cruising with the motor barely turning over. If you want it, there's a red Tesla Model S up there by the looks. Or if you're showing off around town or something, you want acceleration, we can just put it in second or third gear. So there's advantages to having a manual gearbox. Like if the i-MiEV had like a 2-speed diff, say, on the highway it'd be using less energy because the motor's doing less RPMs. So anyway, with the F100, you could do a conversion that way, or if you wanted to, you could just do direct drive to the tail shaft, so no gearbox at all. So depending on the RPM range of the motor and the torque settings of the motor, that would depend on the performance of the vehicle. But with the Ford, it's got a 9-inch in it, so you can actually change the diff ratios in the Ford 9-inch rear end and work out a perfect combination for the F100. Whether you wanted it to accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers quickly, or whether you want it to be more set up for highway cruising, or adjust the gears and the diff to have something intermediate, something that has reasonable acceleration, but also has reasonable gears, so you're not spinning the electric motor at high RPM on the freeway. As far as I'm concerned, the last thing I need is 0 to 60 in a ridiculous amount of time. The other option you could do with the F100 for a conversion is you could remove the real diff and you could put in a complete Tesla rear axle, probably something out of a Model S, because the F100 is quite a big old American ute truck. So the wide axle of the Model S would suit. So you could put the Model S axle, whole rear drivetrain in the back. There'd be no tail shaft. There'd be nothing, next to nothing in the engine bay. So you've got all that extra room for hiding a large battery pack, and also your other EV components that you need to make it all work. So that's 3 basic ways in which you convert an old F100. And pretty much you can do that with any vehicle. So we're down to 115 kilometers on the gasometer. We're down to halfway on our charge, and my mobile phone is slipping again. Oh, another Tesla, or the same one that's... No, I wasn't going that fast. So yes, another Tesla. Time and time again, that's that's the electric vehicle that you see out there. Should have put one more piece of tape on my tripod that's holding the phone. All right, so I also have a 1967 Corvair sitting at home that was purpose bought to be an electric vehicle conversion. A lot of people don't know what a Corvair is. Corvair, not a Corvette. But the Corvair is a Chevy, American-made, that was rear-engined, air-cooled boxer motor that was produced from, I think, the 1960s to 1969 as an answer to the Volkswagen Beetle and to the Porsches. It's 2.5 litre air-cooled motor, and this one's 4-speed manual. But I purpose bought this to do an electric conversion on it. It already has a frunk already, so no need to mess around with that. Yeah, it's a two-door hardtop, I guess you would call it. It looks, for those that know what a Camaro, it looks like similar to a 67 or a 60s Camaro, because I think basically they pinched the styling of the Corvair for the Camaros. And the rear end's a little bit different with kind of like the twin fighter jet exhaust lenses on the back. But about the size of a Mustang or a Camaro. But again, it would be a phenomenal vehicle to convert to electric. Either just bolting an electric motor up to the gearbox, or taking out the transaxle in complete and putting in a complete rear motor assembly from like maybe a Tesla Model 3, because it's not as big as the FE. Yeah, probably just a whole rear axle out of a Model 3. And then instantly that's got anywhere up to like about 300 horsepower, which would just be ridiculous. So yeah, you can convert any vehicle to electric if you have the will and the dollars to make it happen. Some people say, well, why bother? Well, it's a classic car. People drive their classic cars these days because they love the look of them. It reminds them of a bygone era. They love the styling. It's just their passion. So in the years to come, when buying fuel is ridiculously expensive, or even it's no longer an option for all sorts of reasons, converting your classic car to electric is going to be the only way you can continue to drive it. Just trying to think of other electric vehicles that I've seen converted in Brisbane, in Australia. In person, not too many because I don't get out too much. But GT Tooling, I think it's Jeff O'Toole is his name. He's quite busy with conversions down there. But one of the wildest things I saw out of his shop was just a quick little video, and it was 1901, 1902 Baker Electric, which is basically a big black box on 4 wheels. But yeah, there's one of those in Australia, and it was brought into him for, I guess, refurbishing of the battery pack. But there's just a little short video of that thing driving down the road, and it's phenomenal. It's just such a beautiful piece of history that's still on the road and still running. Plenty of electric combis in Australia as well. They're they're good candidates for EV conversions. You just take the motor out, or not just, there's a whole procedure to it and a whole science to it, but take the motor out and bolt up the likes of a Hyper 9 to the gearbox, and away you go. And it improves the car significantly. There's no noise, there's no stink, there's no smell. The cars are smoother, they're quieter, they have more power. They always have more power. So yeah, converting any old vehicle to electric, it's totally doable with the will and the dollars. Yes, it can be expensive to convert them, but with more and more salvage vehicles, electric vehicles being on offer, even just in this last year, the availability of parts, the affordability of parts is increasing every day. Like, it's when I first started my Facebook page, you could barely find any electric vehicles for listings. But now there's anywhere from 6 to 10 a week that seem to be going up for auctions, and Model 3s going quite cheaply. When I first started out, they were being sold for, so these are written off ones, statutory write-offs, written off ones that were people were paying like $40,000 for them, ridiculously priced, way too much. But of late, you've been able to get them for, on a good day, maybe 12 to 18. But the price of them is coming down. I recently saw an eBay listing for salvage Model 3 and Model S motors in America, and these were being sold for $1,500 to $3,500 US dollars, because obviously Tesla's been operating in America longer than they have been here in Australia. There's a lot more salvaged wrecks over there. So eventually it'll happen here, where availability of good, efficient EV parts is really affordable. All right, what are we down to? We're guesstimator says 110. We're doing 98 kilometers, and we're just under halfway. Just have to bump that a little for you to see. Just under halfway on our battery gauge. And we're coming back in towards Springwood's a fair way off yet. I'm not quite sure where we are at the moment. So yes, jumping around conversation, that was the Bell Electric with GT Tooling. Leon Ford, of course, Leon Ford should be mentioned. He's over in WA, and he's lithium power, and he's been around for a long time too. And he seemed to start by specialising in wrecked Teslas, the Model S and X, but he's been the most reliable battery supplier for a long time. The Model S and X modules are quite handy for EV conversions. I think the modules are about 20-25 kilograms each, and they're anywhere from about 5.2 to maybe 5.6 kilowatt hours. They're quite energy dense, and they're quite useful. But yeah, Leon Ford, lithium power, he's got lots of bits and pieces. And he also has the whole Tesla drive motors, whether it's Model 3, S and X are pretty scarce these days. But yeah, there'll be more Model 3s, but he does lots of stuff. And he has his own website for that as well. I'm just going to see if I can find a pull-off area here, which isn't going to be too difficult, just to do some retaping of my tripod mount. before I lose it completely. I'm just trying to think of more of the guys, um, all the conversion businesses. There's about 20 of them now, Australia wide, and obviously it is growing. But unfortunately, sadly, I'm sorry, guys. The any other names just don't come to mind at the moment. I should have just had a quick look at it before I came out this morning. I didn't anticipate talking about it. But if you want to have a look, All Electric Vehicle Parts Australia is the Facebook page. There's a list there that I've been adding to for all this time. It's just general information, history of electric vehicles in Australia, but more importantly, it's all the names of conversion businesses, names and places of conversion businesses in Australia that you can get your gear from. All right. Okay, so I've lost my tripod for that, but we're still going on the other camera, which is good. All right. Yeah, the tripod mount broke on the camera that was on the gasoline, so I'm just going to have to maybe do a screenshot of that once we've finished everything. So let's see if we can just get back on the highway without getting crashed into. All right, well, that's a bit of a nuisance, so we're down to one camera. I did do a battery test on the one camera, and I had 2.5 hours of runtime on that one, but I guess one camera's good for 2.5 hours, and the other one's good for probably only about an hour and a half. All right, so we're down to 96 kilometers on the gasometer. We're doing 104 kilometers an hour. It's getting a little warm in here because I've got all windows up and no AC running. And we're down to 5 bars on the fuel gauge. Yeah, so I think I was talking about the Facebook page. So yeah, there's over 20 businesses there that do EV conversions or will supply EV parts for you, EV kits, batteries, um, but all up the list. The list is what I call it. It's a Word document that has over 9 pages of information relating to electric vehicles in Australia. It's only Australia focused, and it's 95% electric vehicle parts focused. Occasionally we slip in other bits and pieces, but there's plenty of other Facebook pages in Australia that deal with general content. But the objective is just to try and keep that page focused on electric vehicle parts, um, questions about conversions. Um, but yeah, it's a good central portal for people to come to. It's a springboard basically. So if you end up coming there looking for a parts supplier in Western Australia, you find Leon Ford or any of the other guys, because there's a couple companies in WA, 5 or 6, that are involved with conversions and parts. If that means that page takes you to them and they can answer all your questions, all well and good. We do prefer you to stay on the page and to contribute to it, because the more people having input to the page, the better the page will be. But yeah, at the moment there's about 5,400 members, so it's got a percentage-wise of people interested in electric vehicle conversions in Australia. That's probably a good result, considering it still really is early days for EVs in Australia. We're so far behind the rest of the world. Um, we're getting there. The change in government to the new Labor government has changed a lot of things. Don't want to go into politics, but when you've got a government that's more supportive of renewables and electric vehicles, that helps. And it's not like it needs subsidies for electric vehicles and renewables to succeed, to thrive. But it'd be nice if it was on EVs and renewables were on an even playing field. The amount of subsidies that fossil fuel companies or industry gets, what the hell? It's just ridiculous. I have no idea what this person's doing. Almost down to 60 kilometres in a 100 kilometre zone. Yeah, so it'd be nice if there was a level playing field for all players. If they want to take all the fossil fuel subsidies, take them away from the fossil fuel industries, that would certainly be advantageous. But I guess you'd have major chaos. So yeah, that's the Facebook page. I don't think there's much more to say there, but if you're looking for EV salvage parts or statutory written off vehicles that you can repurpose for your own electric vehicle project, that's a good place to go. There's two main auction houses, Mannerheim and Pickering's, with a few other bits and pieces thrown in there, but usually I scan them every morning, probably spend about anywhere from too much time, 30 minutes to an hour, just scanning all the auction sites to see what's available. And if I can be around or if I can record the results of the auction, I'll put that up there so you've got an indication of what's going for what price, what the market value is for wrecked vehicles. The other thing we do there is any cheap electric vehicles for sale, and which usually means only a Mitsubishi i-MiEV or a Nissan Leaf, because they're your cheapest options for electric vehicles. There's a Nissan Leaf at the moment, I think it's a 2014, with a 75 kilometre range left in it. That's on car sales for 10,000 Australian dollars. So yes, the battery's coming to end of its useful life in the car, but there is a crowd in Sydney that I've only recently become aware of that do Nissan Leaf battery upgrades. I think the basic cost is somewhere around 13 grand for the battery, plus there's a few other things you need to add to that. But if you want them to do the whole conversion for you, I think the cost is somewhere around about 15-ish. Don't quote me. But yeah, that's a viable option, I suppose. Like if you get the Leaf for 10 grand with no other mechanical, electrical issues, and you put a new battery in it for say 15 grand, for $25,000 you're driving around in, yes, a 2014 Nissan Leaf, but it'll probably go another decade. And that's your cheapest option for getting into an electric vehicle with any range in Australia at the moment. Yeah, 25 grand for an old electric vehicle with a new battery. There have been some that have gone even cheaper with completely dead batteries. So in that case, I think there was one recently was going for auction, but the most I could get was about 3,000 for it. There wasn't a great deal of interest in it. But if you could pick up a Leaf that had no other issues and then upgraded the battery, so for less than 20 grand, you could be in an as new electric vehicle. All right, so Kilometer's down to 83 kilometers and 1 to 5 bars of range. All right, so we're coming up to Springwood again. Which is Oz Electric Vehicles, Graham's shop. The gasometer is telling me 77 kilometers, but I still have 5 bars on the energy gauge. So I think driving at these low speeds, the gasometer will start coming up again. Those noisy, stinky diesel trucks. Speaking of diesel trucks, a lot of people are aware of what Tesla's doing with their electric semi. A lot of people may not be aware of what Janus Electric or Janus Australia are doing down in New South Wales. They're a company that you can take your semi to, your semi truck, your Class A truck to, and for around $175,000 they can do a complete electric conversion on the truck for you. The batteries, where the fuel tanks typically are on a semi, that's where the batteries get put on the trucks, and these are easy to swap. They're a swappable battery, and depending on your geography, where you're traveling, how much weight you're carrying, but up to about 500 kilometers, I think, on those batteries. So once we have electric transportation of freight, that has the potential to be a massive game changer. Not just for the environment, there's a Model X over there by the looks, not just for the environment, but cost of living for all Australians. Everything in Australia is transported, whether it's a truck or a train, but in some part of its life it's been on a truck of some description, and all the costs of running those vehicles, the cost of powering those vehicles is all added to, obviously, to the cost of transport. So if these vehicles were all of a sudden able to be electrified, there's less maintenance costs, there's less costs for the energy to run them, and there's the potential for the cost of anything that's being shipped, transported Australia-wide, to cost less for all of us, for consumers. There was recent talk about the truck registration being lifted 8%, 10%, I'm not sure of the figure, but truck registration costs are going up, and it's crazy for that to happen because that cost is just going to be directly pushed forward or pushed on to the consumer. You know, the trucking industry is not going to absorb that. That's going to be directly fobbed off to the consumer, so the price of anything transported goes up again. Now, if we could convert our transport fleet to electric, power it by renewables, there's significant cost savings for the operators of those fleets, and significant potential cost reductions for consumers. Janice were talking about the electric motor in that vehicle being multi-decade. So your motor's going to last for decades, as opposed to a good diesel motor. You might get I'm no trucking expert, but if you get 1 million kilometres out of that, you're probably good going. And the cost to rebuild a diesel motor like that, depending on what's wrong with it, but I've been told 50 to about 90,000. So yeah, for $175,000 to convert a Class A truck to an electric vehicle that gets potentially up to 500 kilometres of range on a single charge, it's awesome. And it's fabulous news, fascinating news. It's really important, but there's not a great deal of being said about it. Now, with the batteries, Janice gives people the option to buy the battery outright, or there's a possibility or an option just to do to lease the batteries. So, and as the spokesperson, I think the chairman was saying, why should you buy batteries that are going to be inferior or obsolete in the next few years? So with a lease option for the batteries, you have the possibility to have best battery technology all the time. And as an example, when my i-MiEV was produced in 2010, it had a 16 kilowatt battery. But when Graham did the battery backup, when that was put in 2012, in the exact same battery box, it had 28 kilowatt hour capacity. So in 12 years, the battery capacity went from 16 kilowatt hours to 28 kilowatt hours, all in the same physical size of the battery pack. So that's in 12 years. So with Janice, what's to say that the battery modules that they have wouldn't be 600 kilometres, 700 kilometres in the next few years. And the battery modules, they're swappable. You pick them up with a forklift, you drop them in with a forklift, and away you go. And any transport company is going to have a forklift. Black's Transport at Acacia Ridge have about 10 there. They've got about 300 employees. They run to Rockhampton 5 nights of the week, 6 nights of the week. If they were able to convert their trucks to electric, significant cost reductions, but also significant maintenance cost reductions as well. And the Janus trucks that they convert, they're better than the Tesla Semi. They're a full Class A truck, which is up to, I think, 92 tonnes that they can drag around. I'm not sure, but I think a standard B double with it's about 60 tonnes fully loaded. So yeah, it's phenomenal what Janus is doing, and it should be world news, but it doesn't appear to be world news. Alright, we're down to 66 kilometres of range and 3 bars by the looks. And I'm probably maybe 8 kilometres from home. So what I'll probably do is just do a little bit of local driving, so I'm not too far from home, so I can just duck in and get a recharge. Alright. Apologise again for the issues with the filming equipment. I had tested them and there should have been 2.5 hours of runtime in the cameras, but I guess I got that wrong. And hopefully the microphone on the phone is picking this up well enough for everyone. Shonky Video Productions here. I could talk a little more about my YouTube site, which I've only really started up, I don't know, a couple months ago. I think there's some stories that need to be told about electric vehicles, which no one's really telling. Oops, I don't want that lane, I want to stay in this lane. It is a little distracting talking and driving. There's stories that need to be told that I don't think are being told. As far as most people are concerned, the i-MiEV is an old electric vehicle, and it doesn't have any relevance anymore. And I think that's completely untrue. I have an idea for doing a video on this little EV, claiming it to be the most important electric vehicle in Australia today, and for justifying my reasons for that statement. I don't think anyone's telling the story about upgraded EVs and making that more prominent in the general public's awareness. As you've seen today, it's been a great little EV. You can't see much of what's happening inside the cabin. It's a fabulous little EV. Totally capable of transporting someone long distances in reasonable or suitable comfort. So I don't think that story's being told. And now that there's these guys down in New South Wales that are doing battery upgrades for the Nissan Leaf for a reasonable cost, that's pretty much a game changer too for the second car market, making EVs more affordable for people on a budget, or people who have got Scottish don't do it. Who've got Scottish grandparents and don't want to spend too much money. Sorry, I used to be able to do a pretty good Scottish accent, but a bit out of practice. You can't hand the man around the spanner. That sounds bad. Right. Oh yeah, so there's some stories that aren't being told. I think there's more stories to be told about classic cars being converted. Perhaps a greater awareness of that would be nice. Coming back to the i-MiEV again, what are you doing? It's a basic little electric vehicle, but it's a basic little electric vehicle that does everything I need an electric vehicle to do. So yes, I'm coming back to less is more, folks. Do you really need to spend $75,000 on an electric vehicle that has, buttock massaging seats and bits and pieces like that? I just don't see the point of it myself. But yeah, when you look around, there's two people in that car. I think there's one person in the car in front. Most of these cars are just all single occupant. Driving around, polluting the air, throwing 70% of their fuel out the tailpipe. So yeah, it's Janus Electric or Janus Australia. You should have a look at them on the website, on their website. Fully Charged did a great show with them recently when Robert was here in Australia for the Fully Charged show. Yeah, it's a really good episode that they did on Janus. Yeah, an absolute game changer. Cost of living pressures that Australia's experiencing, or the whole world is experiencing at the moment. But imagine if you could get the price of fuel for your diesel truck from 90 cents or $1 a kilometre down to 60 cents, or potentially even less, once you factor in the extremely low maintenance costs. But yeah, that's a significant game changer, not from just an environmental point of view, but an economic point of view. So what other stories would I like to tell? There's more i-MiEVs around Brisbane. I don't personally know them myself. Graham does, of course, because they're clients of his. But to be able to have a chat with them about their experience with the i-MiEV and to garner some support, I suppose, for less is more idea of electric vehicles. That would be a good story to tell. Tesla Model X on the right there. You know, the Tesla, it's amazing technology, and they're responsible for the global shift towards acceptance of electric vehicles. And I know they are working towards the Model 2 or the Model Tau, whatever it's going to be called, which is a smaller electric hatch, I believe, which, you know, the whole world's just waiting to hear. Yeah, the Model 3 was supposed to be the affordable electric vehicle. In Australia, it's not. In America, maybe. But yes, the next few years in Australia for electric vehicles is going to be interesting, and probably made most interesting by the Chinese entrance into the market. And that potentially opens up a whole other can of worms with what's happening in the world with various saber or rattling. So Kilometer's telling me I have 66 kilometres left and still 4 bars. The gasometer's now gone up to 67 kilometres, which was expected. Once you get away from the highway speeds and the gasometer starts recalculating. So we're driving around the leafy suburb of Tarragindi. Hopefully the camera is recording okay. Hopefully the microphone is picking up okay. Hopefully my bladder lasts long enough to finish the recording. Overlooking Salisbury with a view in the distance. I don't know if you can quite see that. It's a very cautious driver in front of me, which is okay because I'm not in a hurry. Where are you going? You're going right? Okay. No, you're going left. Sorry. We'll go right. So if you're still listening at this stage, congratulations. I think most people are just going to skip through the video and go to the end, but I did want to do a continuous recording, just as documented proof that it was all done in one go. No CGI or special camera effects included. None at all. Just very, very shonky video production here. But yeah, just after reading some of the comments on the Facebook page yesterday, I just kind of, incensed is too strong a word, but just felt obligated to do this, just to show how awesome a little vehicle this is. I know that's such an Americanism, but just to show you how awesome this now 13-year-old electric vehicle is. At some stage I will do a walk around of the i-MiEV, just to show you the condition that it's in. But yeah, it's fabulous. Looks like brand new inside. So 1 o'clock. How long have I been rabbiting on for? 1:16 according to that. And we're getting down to 64 kilometres of range. Now up to 66. And I still have 4 bars of energy left on the energy gauge. So any questions you want to ask me, you can put them in the comments of the YouTube page. I hope that I'll be able to go home and work out how to edit these 2 separate files into something presentable for you. So we're now leaving Maruka and heading out towards Salisbury on our left, cars in front that don't know what they're doing at all. Why are we doing 50 in a 60 zone? Come on. I think part of the problem is that I've just come from doing an hour and a half of 100 kilometres an hour, and now this seems extremely slow. Extremely slow. In fact, breaking the speed limit. Wow. Yes, I'm acclimatised to zipping along the freeway at 100 kilometres an hour, and all of a sudden 60 kilometres an hour seems extraordinarily slow. So this is coming into Cooper's Plains. Typically an industrial part of Brisbane's south side. And these tyre guys that stand out there all day just waving for people to come in. Is this the most exciting video production you've ever seen? I don't think so. Alright, 63 kilometres on the gasometer and still 4 bars. I really need Ed to get out and have a bit of a stretch. And on the trip meter has us going 166 kilometres at this stage. I guess I've spoken generally about cabin size in the i-MiEV, but just to emphasise that a little bit more. Width-wise, yeah, it is a bit of a compromise, but 2 grown adults can fit in here quite comfortably. Headroom, there's way more headroom in the i-MiEV than there was in the Nissan Leaf or the Holden Bolt. Way more headroom. In fact, it probably passes the Jack test just. I am 6'3", Jack's 6'5". If you don't know who Jack is, he's Jack Scarlett. He's the presenter, or one of the presenters on the Fully Charged show. I'm a big fan and big follower. Yes, even he would be able to sit in one of these with reasonable comfort, I think. It would actually be cool for the Fully Charged show to revisit the Mitsubishi i-MiEV and revisit the Mitsubishi i-MiEV with an upgraded battery pack. It's such a shame that they didn't do that when they were here in Australia. Graham did meet Robert Llewellyn at the Fully Charged show down in Sydney, and Graham Manita, was telling him about the i-MiEV upgrade battery pack, but he wasn't convinced that Robert actually believed him that it was something real. So, yeah, just because I think one of the first EV videos that Fully Charged then, but the Fully Charged show did, was on the Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's one of my favourite videos because it's just very fireside chat and zipping around this little i-MiEV. It's probably the first video that they did, and it would kind of be nice for them to revisit it, but to revisit it with the upgraded option. Speaking of the upgraded option, the battery upgrade is licensed by Oz Electric Vehicles to other installers throughout Australia. They're looking for installers in America, for anyone that's interested there. They have some guys in Holland, I think, some guys in Ukraine. But yeah, the licensed installers can be found on their website. But yeah, it'd be kind of cool to have Fully Charged and Robert Llewellyn have him revisit the i-MiEV and see how well Jack fits into it. So we're at 60 kilometres and still 4 bars of energy. I suppose we better stop for that. Suppose there's an opportunity here to do a 0 to 60 kilometres an hour. Oh, that's the other thing that I haven't mentioned with Graham's battery upgrade. I don't want to keep rabbiting on about Graham, but he's the one that's supplied the upgrade for the i-MiEV. I'm not being paid or compensated in any way by Graham. But there's a few other options that you can get with the i-MiEV upgrade. There's the battery pack, of course, but if you want to, there's a cruise control, which they can add to the vehicle. And now that it has this range, that might be handy because you could use the cruise control on highway driving to and from work. So that's another option. And the other option they have is regen. They can actually convert it to the modest regen that it has at the moment in B mode to full one pedal driving. They're still in the final stages of nipping and tucking that, of testing that, but they have that on their test mule, which I have driven, and it is full one pedal driving. All you need to do is touch the accelerator. There's a little bit of play between accelerating and not, so you can kind of cruise in that little zone in the pedal. So it's not full on, full off. There is a little bit of neutral in the middle of that pedal. But the other option is that when you have the regen, it's good for about an extra 30 kilometers of range per recharge. Just the amount of energy that it's able to put back into the battery. And that's, if you're doing highway traveling, that's quite significant. So I'm down to 3 bars of energy and 55 kilometers left. And it's 1:27. Camera is still going. Buttocks are starting to complain a little. I need to get out and stretch. But I guess we're going a bit further. Kilometers travelled is 169.9. Something I haven't really talked about, it equates more to back to the Facebook page. There's a lot of people that join the page looking for DIY power walls, and there's some folks in Australia doing amazing things, repurposing batteries for that. But there's a lot of people that do off-grid living as well, and for them it comes way more important. There was what was it? Was it a BYD? I think it's BYD that will do vehicle to load. There was a BYD recently that went up at auction and statutory write-off. But the battery pack in those is about 60 kilowatt hours. It'll do 10 amp draw from the vehicle. Vehicle to house, no, but vehicle to load, yes. But it sold for $3,500. So if someone was living off grid and was looking for a cheap battery backup option, that would be phenomenal. So we're down to 3 bars now, with 53 kilometers left on the gasometer. Wind up the window, make it a bit easy for the microphone. 52 kilometers and 3 bars. It's quite hard to get accustomed to the suburban speeds after being on the highway for some time. But again, that comes down to these vehicles being so smooth. Even this 13-year-old EV, it's just smooth like butter. And a new EV, like a new Tesla or new whatever, would be even smoother, I am sure. If anyone has any information on the difference in size between the Australian i-MiEV or the as opposed to the American one, I know they're supposed to be larger, but I've never specifically found any information on that. But if Mitsubishi had produced the American version for a global market, it might have been a completely different result. Like when these first released in Australia, yeah, they look dinky. It's tiny. You think, oh, no way would that be a suitable car for me. But had they released the larger version, it might have been a different story. But basically, the i-MiEV was ahead of its time. Yes, the Leaf and the Tesla was around at the same time, but these were the first, I believe, modern mass-produced electric vehicles. They started in Japan in 2009, and the Leaf and the Tesla S was just a little after that. But if Mitsubishi had kept going, instead of pulling production on these, which I think stopped mainly to 2017. There might have been still some in production 2019, but if they'd kept going, they'd potentially be a world leader. Tesla may not have been around because the reason that Elon started Tesla was because no one else was doing it. There were no other EV makers around then doing it. So yeah, that would have been completely different as well. Mitsubishi and Nissan are doing a badge share, label share vehicle with a new electric vehicle in Japan. I think it was announced a year ago. Again, it's an adaptation or a converted petrol vehicle that they've turned into electric. I think the Mitsubishi is called the XK. It's very square, it's very boxy. The range appears to be the same as the Mitsubishi was when it was first released. And I think they're saying 160, but real world it's probably more like 120, 130, which is a shame, because if they could make that 200 kilometer range vehicle, it would be highly desirable. But yeah, I think it's the XK. But have a look at it. It's very boxy, but it's jam-packed, filled with modern Japanese technology and some clever manipulation of the cabin. The back seat is on a slider, so if you had 4 burly Australians that needed to be transported somewhere, you can slide the seat all the way back into the rear cargo area, so there's plenty of leg room. But if it's just you and your other going to do the shopping, you can push it forward to have a significant amount of cargo storage space. So it's quite a clever option. If the i-MiEV, if this vehicle had that, that would be a game changer too. So yeah, it's they call it the XK, and I think Nissan call it the Sakura, which is the cherry blossom, which is quite beautiful if you've ever been to Japan in cherry blossom season. I lived in Japan for about 3 years, so yes, interesting place. Good place, great place. Thoroughly enjoyed it, met some fantastic and fascinating people. So I think after nearly two hours, I'm starting to run out of things to say. Need to have a bit of a break. Yeah, so we're at 53 kilometers. We've kind of gone back up, and we're down to 3 bars. And it's saying we've done 175.1 kilometers. I think I can safely say that if I ended the video now and showed you video of the gasometer, the range left on the vehicle, and the kilometers traveled, you would have to agree that the battery upgrade is a 200 plus upgrade option deal. And if you don't, well, you're more than welcome to come and visit with decent camera equipment, and we can do it properly all over again. Yes, I think I need to call it quits. I need a rest break. Which again is another thing about EVs. People talk about limited range, etc. But how many kilometers can you travel in one sitting without stopping for a break somewhere, getting out and stretching your legs, having a bathroom break, maybe having something to eat or drink? So yes, with a range of 200 plus kilometers on this, it's totally practical, totally viable little electric vehicle for God knows how many of Australian people, but lots. I think the last time I checked, the average kilometres travelled by Aussies in a day to and from work was 30 to 40 kilometres. So when people start talking about range anxiety, that's not really the issue. Really the issue is charger anxiety. Because all the EVs we have on the market today, and even this one, more than capable of taking you a great enough distance in a single sitting. So the battery really isn't the option, it's the charging infrastructure, which in Australia is pretty terrible, but we've been in a slumber for the last 10 years. Lack of political will, mainly, but that is changing. So fast chargers and rapid chargers going in more and more places. BP, the BP Pulse out at it's the end of Paradise Road. That's fantastic because out this part of Brisbane there's not a great deal. There's one going in at the Browns Plains Shopping Centre. That's the BP Pulse. Ipswich has a couple, but there's no fast charges between here and Warwick, which is, I don't know, approximately a 2-hour drive. There's none in Beaudesert, there's none in Boona, Warwick, which is a bugaboo for me because that's the part of the world that I kind of like to go for a drive in. It's the scenic rim. It's a beautiful part of the world, lots of countryside, lots of farms, mountain ranges, rainforests, and there's no fast EV charging out in that part. So yes, so BP Pulse putting one in it, I think it's Larapinta. But if BP can put in more chargers in any of their service stations out that part of the world, that would be fantastic. and the one at Larapinta only has one station with 2 plugs, CCS2 and 1 CHAdeMO from memory. But yeah, even that, because it's more of an emergency charge really than anything else. Tesla destination Tesla charging out that way, non-existent. I think there's some destination Tesla destination charging out there. There's one beside Boona, there's a guest house, there's another winery, but for the general public, for charging out that part of the world, nothing, none at all. Alright, so we're down to 47 kilometres. We have 3 bars of charge on the vehicle, and we're currently driving through the Maruka shopping centre. That'll be exciting for everyone. Yeah, I'd like to keep going, but I only need to have a bathroom break and stretch my legs and maybe something to eat, so I'm heading home. But hopefully I've demonstrated suitably for any of the naysayers, repeating myself, but yep, it's a 200 plus range battery upgrade and a phenomenal little vehicle. I keep going on about that, I know, but seriously, people when they first look at this, they think, yeah, how could you drive that? But once you've driven it and once you've lived in it for a little while, you'll be saying, oh, how could I not? And if you're a more average size Australian, you'll love it. Ton of room for you. If you're a giant, 6'3" and 120 kilograms, it's still totally doable. In comfort. So, and travelling for free, no cost. That's got to be great, especially when fuel prices around here hit $2 a litre. That's just frightening. And who knows what's going to happen with fuel prices in the next few years. Whether because there'll never be a glut of fuel, I guess, because that's all manipulated and controlled. So, but yeah, what happens when more and more people switch to electric and there's less and less demand for petrol, for fossil fuels? Who knows what's going to happen there? Are they, inverted commas, going to start jumping it cheaply just to try and keep maintaining some profit? Or what? I don't know. But I do know that I don't have to think about that or worry about that by having this wee electric beastie. Driving electric vehicle, swapping from petrol to electric, another thing you'll realise is that you're never driving past a fuel station and checking out the prices. I used to do that all the time, but now don't even think about it. Wonder if that little electric hum is coming through on the microphone. Alright, so we're just about done. Just need to stop here. There we are. Okay. Just had to find my keys for the garage door. So 43 kilometres and 3 bars left. And there's a 1967 Corvair. Oh. All right, and I'm back. Whew. I wasn't kidding when I told you I needed a bathroom break. All right, so here we are. All right, wait for that to focus. Probably need to put on some reading glasses. Give me half a moment. Alright, so 2 hours and 49 minutes of recording. Wow. I didn't anticipate it would be that long. Alright, so we have 3 bars of energy left. We have 43 kilometers left on the gasometer. And we have travelled 179.3 kilometers. Now, the gasometer doesn't, sorry, not the gasometer, the energy gauge, fuel gauge, I guess we will call it, it doesn't start flashing until the last bar, and when it gets to the last bar, it has about 20 kilometers of range left in it, I believe, 20 or 30. I've only done that once since getting the battery upgrade. It'll start flashing and then I come home and I charge it up, but I think it's about 20 or 30 kilometers left in there as a buffer. So I think everyone should be able to agree that with 179.3 kilometers traveled, with 3 bars of energy left, this definitely is a 200 plus kilometer battery upgrade. And it's completely revitalized this little car. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. That's it. That's all for now. I apologize for any wonkiness in any of the filming or any of the sound, but not really set up for this. Still going through the process of working out what I'm doing. But I do have more stories that I would like to tell with the i-MiEV and just electric vehicles in general. So wish me luck, and I suppose subscribe or click on it or like it or something. All right, I think that's all for now. Thank you.